This time in the Prop Master, well, we're going to try something a little bit different. And by different, I mean I'm going to show you some video of me working on the Jetpack prototype, and I'm going to try to pass that off as a regular video. Yay! In all seriousness, I did get quite a bit of positive feedback on the Sabine Wren helmet prototype video that I did so long ago that, you know, this could be a good thing actually. I've been trying to get a lot more videos out there and, you know, just to make the channel better. And the alternative to doing this is to basically disappear for a month while I work on the prototype and the templates, and then start producing the next video. So I think it's better just to show you kind of the process that I'm going through and, you know, let you see it. Now let me be totally honest about one thing, and that is that I've never held or even seen the actual prop in real life. So, you know, everything that I'm going with is strictly things that I've seen online, screen captures from the movies, you know, whatever pictures people have taken of the prop when it's on exhibition somewhere. So everything I'm doing is based on that. Oh, and some, you know, information that's been posted on the dented helmet and that kind of thing. So with that said, I think I've actually got a pretty good idea of what the actual prop looks like. But even so, we're gonna have to work through some things. And there's a lot to do on this, so, you know, as usual, let's get to work. Okay, so I've clearly started working on this before filming, mostly just preliminary stuff. My thought was I wanted to get something as a reference before I started actually trying to prototype this. So I wanted to get a 1:1 scale, 100% the right size and proportion, something that I can use to take some measurements of and also just look at. To my surprise, I couldn't find anything that fit that bill online anywhere. It's very surprising to me that after all these years and with the different groups, the Mandalorian Mercs, the dented helmet, the 501st, all these different groups, at least not this readily available, have any of them put forward an engineering style diagram of the jetpack. I can't seem to find anything that would actually give me correct sizes. Well, I'll say that. That's not 100% true. If you go on the dented helmet, you may recognize this. There's a series of printouts that they've got on there that have measurements and things. And this was actually a huge help. This was the single most helpful thing on all of the internet. So thank you, Dented Helmet, for that. The other thing is I found this photograph, which I'm reasonably sure. Well, let's put it this way. This is either a photograph of a screen-used jetpack, or it is a really good model of one. Someone really took a lot of time to do a good job to produce this. When I compared this to the jetpacks that I can kind of see on screen, this looks pretty close. If it's not one of the jetpacks that was used, someone did a great job. And I kind of went back and forth on these to get this diagram here, or this line drawing. This was hugely helpful, but unfortunately it's not to scale. I think this must have been a sketch that someone did so that they would have a place to put the measurements that they took. And I was able to use this to get my basic shape and then start modifying it to get the sizes correct. And when I compare this photograph and my line drawing, width-wise, all the measurements work out great. So I got that. Vertically, however, the measurements that were on this diagram proportionally just don't work with the photograph that I've got. Parts are either too long or too short, but the good thing is that I got a good scale horizontally, and I can kind of use that. Once I got this all built out to scale, I can kind of then use the photograph to get my vertical measurements. So to the best of my ability, this is an accurate one-to-one scale line drawing. There are some things where we're a little off. Up in this area here, this is actually much fatter here than it is in the photograph. And that's just me trying to get something that I think will work as opposed to what's actually there. It'll kind of go back and forth as to what I can actually find will actually determine this shape anyway. That kind of takes me to what you see all over, which is just everything I've gathered together to do this prototype. This is pretty much every pipe and tube that I have available to me. I've got some paper tubes there. I've got some PVC pipe, and mostly just trying to get these 3-inch cylinders for the sides here. That turned out to be very difficult. You can get 3-inch PVC, but PVC is a pipe, so it's more concerned with the internal diameter. So obviously a 3-inch PVC is not a 3-inch external diameter, it's the internal diameter. So actually they're more like 3.5 inches across. So that doesn't really work. Unfortunately, even though these are paper tubes, they're also internal diameter. Just FYI, the difference between a pipe and a tube is, or tubing, is a pipe is usually something that things flow through, so it's more concerned with the internal diameter. So a 3-inch pipe will be 3 inches on the inside, not outside. Whereas a tube is more of a structural thing, so it's more concerned with the outside diameter. So a 3-inch tube will be 3 inches on the outside, whereas a 3-inch pipe is 3 inches on the inside. Just throwing that out there. Also trying to find the 3 inches here. What I finally did was 2-inch PVC and then 2 layers of 4mm foam actually come out to 3 inches. So I'll probably use that in the prototype, but that's not going to be very helpful in the real product. I don't want it to be foam or anything. So I've actually ordered from Amazon a 3-inch external diameter aluminum pipe, or I should say tube. So they'll be coming in the future, but I won't use that for the prototype. Good news is for this center pipe here, which has also been interesting. Looking at the photographs, or the photograph here and of the screenshots, this tube is a little bit different than I see in almost all of the pieces that I see worn out. The Cosplay pieces all seem to be either 4 or 4.5 inches all the way up. And from what I can tell from this photo and the screenshots that I've got, it's 4.5 inches down here until it comes to this section here, and then it actually reduces down to 4 inches. And the good news, even though PVC doesn't, 4-inch PVC would be 4.5 inches, that works fine for down here. So I've got my 4.5-inch piece for down here at the bottom. And then up here, if you take a 3-inch PVC, not the PVC itself, but 3-inch PVC coupler, that turns out to be 4 inches on the outside. I then take a 3-inch long section of a 3-inch PVC pipe, put that in there, and the 3-inch reducer to 1.5 inches is perfect for right here. And that's 4 inches across. And not only that, it will fit inside with some force, I'm sure. It should fit inside the PVC with 4-inch PVC. I know it'll fit this direction, so it should fit, this way with some help. So at least we've got that covered. Now when it comes to the real starting point, which is the back of this piece, I thought it was going to be real straightforward, and we'll just be able to trace this out and cut it out. But finally getting some pictures of the back of the Jetpack, it's actually concave. It's not flat across, and it's not just concave horizontally. It's got a complex compound, so it curves forward on the bottom and forward on the sides to contour around your back. So that'll be sort of the more complicated place to start, and I guess the best thing to do is just to start working on it. So I'll try to do an outline of this, and then use that as a basic template, and we'll start messing around to see if we can't form the pieces for the back itself. So let's get started on that. Got some tracing paper. I think we can just tape those together. Doesn't have to be anything too precise. Actually, I wonder, no, that's not wide enough. 3 pieces it is. So I'm not trying for anything precise here. Try not to put the tape over where I'm going to be drawing the line. Grab a pencil real quick. Okay, let's just do a quick outline here. I'm going to line the bottom up so I don't have to cut it out. I guess I really just need half of it. I'll go ahead and mark this side so that I can get my straight line. Unfortunately, I don't have a center line marked here. Probably should. Well, let's go ahead and mark the whole thing then. Move these out of the way. This is pretty much a straight edge here, or is it? There's a little bit of an arch there, it looks like. Okay, and instead of just going up here with the curve top, I think this should probably line up kind of like with the back collar on the back of the armor itself, and that's straight across. So, okay, we can go ahead and cut this out. Okay, instead of using scissors, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out an X-Acto knife. Just got a bit more control this way. I think I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape You have to be a little bit careful with this tracing paper. It can rip a little bit sometimes. I ran out of blades from my small X-Acto knife, so I'm having to use the red handle. Okay, and for prototyping, it's really good to use cardboard, or in this case, I'm going to use foam core. The reason why I don't want to use the cardboard is because unless I use two different sheets of cardboard where the corrugations go in opposite directions, you get a really flexible piece in one direction that tends to crease. And I want something that's a bit more rigid. So let's move our reference. I've got quite a few smaller sheets than this, but they're all warped at the moment, so I've got them under some weights to flatten out. But this will work fine. Put this into the corner so I don't have to make these cuts, hopefully within the square. Oh, it looks pretty good. And I'm just going to transfer this over. And let's just cut this out real quick. It's one of those really interesting things where if you're familiar with Adam Savage's channel, Tested, he repeatedly says that when you're trying to cut things, it's better to go with lots of little shallow cuts. It totally contradicts what I learned in art school, which was that you'll never get the same quality cut with multiple cuts as if you get it all at once. Which I don't think is necessarily right, because I've tried to do multiple cuts and it's usually pretty good. If you've got a good sharp blade, it doesn't seem to matter that much. What I will say is that when you go for the single cut, you have a much higher chance of going off and messing up your cut. So I kind of go back and forth on, if I'm trying to do a curve, I tend to do it in all one cut, whereas straight lines I tend to go with multiple cuts. I think the most important thing actually is that you go with a sharp blade. So I think more than the number of cuts, it's that sharp blade that determines how clean the cut is. I think I'm going to ignore this bend at this point. I may actually end up using this as a template, so maybe I won't. Probably not. I suspect this is going to be more sacrificial. Oops. Just realized that I'm cutting this and I don't have my cutting board underneath it. I'm cutting into this MDF, so it's probably okay. I think there's probably no way to make these tight curves not be jagged, but okay. So now I have to determine where the bends happen, and probably need to take some measurements off of the back of the armor. So let me take a look at that, and I'll be right back. Okay, this doesn't look quite like the photograph that I've got, but this does match the measurements off the back of the armor. And if you're wondering, this is a casting that's made from the correct scuba gear tank rack, or whatever you want to call it, that the actual prop was made using. I don't know if I want to use this one or if I want to use this as my guide and actually make one. I'll decide that later on. We'll probably do something so that you don't have to go out and buy a rack like this, because it looks like it should be pretty simple to make. But here's my sections. We're going to go ahead and cut these up. I fear looking at this, is that even... And I'm wondering now if this maybe should angle. Let me take some more measurements and look at my images one more time. Okay, so maybe this is a little better. So I don't think these cutouts actually need to be in the back. I think this needs to be straight down with no cutouts. And then when this cuts here, when this rotates, it'll actually stick further this way, which actually might take care of that part where this tilts forward. We're just going to play around with it and see what happens. I got these measurements I measured the 5-inch gap between the slits in the back of the flak vest. And then I added 1.5 inches on the outside of those for the hook that's going to go on that. When I looked at the picture, this is where I get the spacing from. In the picture, the hooks and the straps that attach to the straps that come out of the back of the armor, everything seems to be on the inside of this middle part. So let's play around with this and see what it looks like. Trying to decide at this point whether or not I should cut across here, and this part looks like it's essentially flat all the way down the back, and it's just these parts that come in and out. So let's start there anyway. Let's just tape it for now. Those are 1, 2, 3 blocks, and they're only 1 inch high, about 2 centimeters. So that's what I'm using to set my difference in, the middle to the outsides. I've got a piece of Bristol board if that wouldn't be easier. Oh, let's go ahead and do this just to see what it looks like. Let me flip it over. And this is showing the difficulties. This just fit too well. This is at least acting more like what I expected it to do. I'm confused as to why it works so well over here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this section here. wonder if I shouldn't cut that at an angle here. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that Bristol board might be better for this because then it can overlap, and foam core's not going to do that yet. Yeah, let me get some Bristol board. Got the Bristol board, but before I do that, let's try just cutting a little section out of the front of these pieces and see what that does. Say maybe a ½ an inch, close to a centimeter. It may be a bit much. That doesn't make sense. That's way too high. Something like a 1/16 of an inch would have been enough. Okay, let's go to the Bristol board. So this should take us back where we were. I'm still kind of concerned because of the photographs that I've seen. It doesn't look like this center section curves in. It's just the outsides that curve in. I'm trying to square up the photographs that I've got of the backside of the jetpack with what's going to work with the armor that I've already made. Because the photographs, this is closer together and just goes down in a straight line. But I know that the distance between the harness pieces on the armor is further apart, and then the slits at the bottom of the flak vest are closer together. So I think this is about, I think instead of doing a straight line here and a diagonal line there, I think I'm just going to go with one diagonal line that goes from here to here. Which probably means I need to cut out some more foam core. Because I already cut these pieces too much. Okay, so we'll leave this straight. We can then curve this a little further out, I think. This might be something we can bend. If we use that Centra, we can just heat that up and bend it at the end, I think. I can hear my gallery methods professor screaming at me. But that's a nice clean cut. That's 1 point to Adam Savage. Probably cut these first, actually, because once they're standing up, I'll never be able to cut them. It kind of helped that the tension of the tape would hold that up, but apparently it won't. That does look more like it, but I think it probably should be up to here, maybe, on the cut. Let's see if I can fix that. I don't know that 2 inches is the right amount there. It seems a little extreme. See if I can find a better spacer. Got to turn the camera back on. Found these coasters. They're about 1/2 inch, so that should work pretty well. Just want the edge to touch. Is that enough? After all that, it might need to be 2 inches. So I think in the actual thing, probably do 3 pieces and then heat and bend this part forward maybe. That would give it a lot more organic shape. I'm going to go see how this fits up against the back of the armor. Okay, so it looks like when I put this compared to my back armor, it's a good 1.5 to 2 inches too short to look right. So it turns out I'm a little taller than Boba Fett or something. So the only thing I can do is really to make everything just, 1.5 inches taller. And I'll have to do that to everything because I want the scale of this to match with the scale of the armor. So whatever percentage you use there, you can use on the armor as well. So, use on the jetpack as well. So, I guess I've got no choice but to make changes to this as well as the file that I printed this out from. So, I'm gonna go do that real quick and then we can do this one more time. It's day 2 and I thought I was recording and apparently I was not. So let me catch you up on what's going on here. I took this and cut it, put a 2-inch section through here where all the lines are pretty much straight. Drew some new lines on there, so now I have this piece that's 2 inches taller. Did the same thing on the digital file. This piece is too short, so it's out. And I have this piece, which is 2 inches taller. The only difference on this one is that I did not use the tape. I just cut partially through the foam core so that the paper's intact on the inside section. So on the outside section, I just cut it. It's just a little bit easier. Now I did, when I held this up against the back of the armor, the shoulders are more flat and then it's more curved. So I thought maybe this could come in, but then this would flare back out to sort of stop the downward feel there. But then when I tried it, this is actually even more in the way than it would have been before. So I think what I'm going to do, I like the way this is working, but I think I'm going to cut this backside and tape the front so that it just curves down here and then curves a little bit more here and then more again here. And it looks like that's going to work pretty well. So let's go ahead and try that real quick. And you're caught up. Probably could do this from the other side, it might be smarter. Before I do that, I think I'm going to tack it in place. The important thing when you're working with tape like this is not to stretch the tape too much so that you don't force everything else to get squeezed together too badly. In other words, if I pull that really tight and kind of stretch the tape, put it down, it's going to try to bow the foam core up, and we don't want that. Okay, so now we tilt here, and then even more here. So once again, I'm going to go hold this up against the armor and see how it looks. This looks like it's going to work pretty well. My only concern is making sure that this doesn't go really far, then this not very far. I want this to go a little bit more, and then finally the end pieces. But I think I'm ready to put some hot glue into these seams to kind of hold them in place. But before I do that, this is working so well that I want to go ahead and make a basic pattern with this. So I've got a couple pieces of Bristol board. I think you might recognize that from the pieces of Bristol that we cut off before. And I'm just going to trace this out. This won't be the final pattern, but it'll be sort of the basic pattern. Okay. Like 4 1/8. Okay, so now I have, I'm going to mark these as well, but now I have my basic pattern. I'll have to work out the middle and then measure back to there to get that. I'll do that later. Okay, so I've gone looking and I found a whole bunch of stuff that I can use as spacers here. So I know I want the final part of this, like this, to be 2 inches. So I've got my 1, 2, 3 blocks here, but I'm going to do this in sections. So I just want this first seam to be like not quite an inch lower than my 2 inches, so maybe like 1.25 inches or something. Not to be real precise here. So I've just got a coaster that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/4 inch. I put it on top of my 1 inch 1, 2, 3 block here, and so that should give me a pretty consistent seam here. And I'm going to see if I can't put some hot glue in there. Try to push it down into the seam. And plus, this is going to be the part that I'm working with afterwards, so I don't want there to be a lot of glue sticking up either. It's a very limited amount of time I can be pushing that down before it starts to burn my fingers, and I have to rub them together. Try to avoid all these other little seams too. Now that that's cooled off, let's go to the other side. Clean all the hot glue off my fingers. So again, I want to avoid getting a lot of glue in these other seams. So I think I'm going to pull that spacer out, and that'll give me this next seam. Okay, but I think I'll put this spacer here on the end so that I can open that up a little more. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go with just one of these, which is quite a bit thinner. Like I said before, this is not super precise stuff here. I'm just trying to get a basic shape. Glue's getting hotter, so I'm gonna have to go shorter distances. This would probably be a great thing to use a cooler hot glue. Looks like that one bent quite as much. It could just be an optical illusion as well. Yep, definitely a cooler melting hot glue would be a good choice. For the actual piece, I might use that piece of 1/4 inch Centra and just mark these lines and then heat them up with the heat gun and just kind of bend them in a more gentle curve, so it's not like straight lines, it's more just sagging down a little bit. You can also use a tool to push that in there and not use your fingers. You just have to clean the tool as well. So it won't change much except for the pane. I think this one's open more because it still has a gap there. Wait till that's completely cooled down, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I held this up to the back armor and it fits pretty well. This part could almost bend further down. There's definitely a gap between the armor and this corner, but then looking at screenshots and stuff, it doesn't curve that far, so I think this is going to be good. So I'm happy with this, and we can go on to building up from this base. Okay, so all I need now is another one of these that I haven't cut up. This will also work as a pattern, so I'll go ahead and cut this out. Be good except for this big cut at the bottom. I guess it's time for a new board. The actual piece won't have these little shoulders. I could just cut those off, to be honest. Now I need this piece. Now I think it's time to figure out the center of this piece so I can line things up easier. glue that, or I could just tape it. So now I just need to connect everything. I think that's the corner there, but I better make sure. Okay. I'm glad to see that's the same on both sides. It's all good. Okay, so now I just need to continue on with this all the way around. Just filling up some big gaps that are caused by the difference in angles. They're not 90 degrees, so they're kind of opened up on the end. Should have marked these like I did the other ones, but I'll do it afterwards. By marking it, I mean using 2 pieces of foam core to get the distance, the thickness, so it'll fit inside here, not on the outside. Maybe I should put the glue on this part. Oh, I gotta make room for that piece of foam core as well, so. It's also at an angle, so it's not actually the width of the foam core, it's a little thicker. Do this side. Bit long here. Sorry. There we go. Not the best, to be honest. Somehow I managed to push the bottoms in too far, but like I said, this doesn't have to be super accurate at this point. Once again, I'm going to fill a gap. Give it a little extra space for the angle. Okay, so here's the basic back piece, and this seems like a pretty good place to stop for now. In the next video, we'll go ahead and start putting our cylinders on here. So this curved part is the part that goes in your back. Oh, here's a cylinder here. So we'll start putting these pieces on. I don't know if I'll use I might use the aluminum pieces, but I might also just use some of this other stuff. So that'll be next time. Okay, so here is the back. It's a pretty good start.